Plague Road is a game that shows up on the Nintendo eShop discount page quite frequently, sometimes on sale for around $1. The game itself has an interesting graphic style. Its gaudy post-apocalyptic vistas are eye-catching and intriguing. The game involves a combination of tactical RPG battles, randomized dungeons, and base building. Seems like it's got quite a lot going for it, right? I decided to download it whilst it was on sale, and here's a quick review for anyone else who is thinking about doing the same. The objective of Plague Road is to lead enigmatic protagonist the Doctor through a series of procedurally generated dungeons to reach the city. Dungeons are simple in design, featuring horizontal pathways linked together by randomly placed doorways. Each room will contain several roaming monsters of varying difficulty, and may also contain chests or rescuable survivors. More on them later. Touching a monster initiates combat. The screen cuts away to a battle grid, and each combatant takes it in turns to move and attack. Each skill has an energy cost, and only a small amount of energy regenerates each round, so you need to think carefully about which skills to use and in which order, in order to avoid turns where you won't be able to do anything. Combat ends when either all of the monsters are killed, or when the Doctor reaches 0 HP. Any companions killed during combat are permanently dead. If the Doctor himself falls, all other party members die, and the Doctor leaves the dungeon. Between dungeon runs, the Doctor returns to his base, an abandoned farm. Rescued survivors are revealed to be a member of one of 5 classes. These survivors can either be added to the party for future dungeon raids, or retired at the farm. Each retired survivor contributes towards upgrading one of the farm's several buildings. These buildings allow you to train your party with new skills, or boost the Doctor's passive statistics. With no experience points or equipment, building up the farm is the only way to develop your characters, and allow you to challenge tougher dungeons. Survivors fall into one of 5 classes: farmers, engineers, soldiers, witches, and nurses. Soldiers are strong, close-range fighters that can also impose status effects. Engineers are slow but powerful and tanky. Witches can cast a number of multi-target and status effect spells. Nurses are the healers of the party, and farmers are balanced melee units that are limited by their lack of special skills. Meanwhile, the Doctor himself has a combination of melee and ranged multi-attack skills. There's very little in the way of narrative progression. Players are given a short cutscene at the start and end of the game, and you will encounter a few quest givers in the first couple of hours. There are also occasional voice-acted rhymes read over the gameplay. Other than that, it's just about completing the dungeon runs. It's a simple game which has a number of appealing elements. The art style is really unique. Its psychedelic landscapes are equal parts bright and cheerful and hideously macabre. The characters are intricately designed, and their cold robotic look lends a certain menace to your fellow farmhands. Building up the farm is fun too. I'd have liked to see more options for how your farm can develop, but it's nonetheless fun to return from a dungeon raid and retire your survivors. It's clear that thought and hard work did go into Plague Road, but unfortunately there are some fatal flaws that majorly bring down the experience. At the crux of the problem is the lack of reward associated with the combats that take up the majority of the game. Aside from survival, killing monsters doesn't really yield any tangible reward. There are no experience points to earn, or better equipment to buy. Progress comes from rescuing the survivors and upgrading your farm, an activity which takes place outside of combat. The most efficient way to play the game, then, is in fact to try and run past every monster that you can, and minimise your encounter rate. This is not a good place for a turn-based RPG to be in. Other RPGs like Paper Mario Sticker Star have tried this and failed. You need some tangible reward for combat to keep the players engaged. Without rewards, fights become meaningless, and with them the very core of the game does as well. The fights themselves aren't particularly interesting either. Getting to move around the map in a tactical style is nice, but with the limited size of the map, and without things like terrain advantages or flanking, there isn't an awful lot to do. If combat took less time, then it wouldn't be so bad, but watching the same slow attack animations again and again does get tiring. The sound effects don't help either, often feeling slightly inappropriate for the attacks they are trying to represent. Another big issue is that while the monsters in later dungeons are tougher, the number and quality of survivors doesn't seem to increase, at least not to the extent that it's worth choosing to go there over the first dungeon. Once you manage to recruit a party with area of effect attacks, you can take out low-level encounters in a couple of moves, nuking everything with your powerful abilities. This is far more efficient than putting up a fight against later enemies, so there's basically no point to grind in high-level areas. So, Plague Road becomes an exercise in trying to stealth past monsters in the first dungeon, an activity that isn't fun and relies as much on luck as on skill. Each time you fail, you're faced with a tedious battle that feels more like a punishment than a core part of the game. You repeat this activity until your village and party are strong enough to take out the harder dungeons and finish the game. If combat was more dynamic and the game offered something tangible for completing fights, then Plague Road could be an entertaining if shallow dungeon crawler. Throw in a stronger narrative and more side quests, and it could have been a decent little game. As it is, Plague Road will become utterly monotonous before it is done. If you're looking at this game when it's not on sale, I'd really recommend avoiding it. It's not worth paying the full price. If it's on sale and heavily marked down, you might consider picking it up if it really looks like your kind of thing. The first few hours are quite entertaining, but be prepared to get bored before the end. Thanks very much for watching. Links to my other videos are on screen now and in the description below. If you found this video useful, then please consider sharing it, and let me know if there are any other games that you'd like me to take a look at.